What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 54 of the Club and Sub podcast this week. Tonight, we got myself, John Stargarian. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox with Lags at Lags_the Capper. Luke's got a work trip this week, so he can't be on.
Myself, John Stargarian. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox.
Getting some back
at
feed here.
Lags_the Capper. Luke's got a work trip this week, so he can't be on.
All right. Fuck. Near disaster early.
All good.
That's what happens when you take a week off. Anyway, yeah, Luke's out this week. C's probably out this week as well. We're going to break this card down, though. Before we get into it, as usual, we're brought to you guys by betonline.ag for a $1,000 for 50% bonus on your first $1,000 deposit. Use the promo code CLUBSUB. They're pretty good. Like I said, best book in MMA. They had props up, I think, on Monday this week. They're always getting them up there early. Definitely worth it if you guys are outside of Jersey and can play them there. Beyond that, last week sucked. Honestly, bottom line, I'm not going to get into it too much. Like you guys know, I don't bitch about robberies or anything like that. But a lot of close decisions. Having 3 units on a plus 240 that lost a 50-50 fight, always fun. But hopefully it's going to be better this week. It's not the prettiest card on paper, but I think there's some decent spots here. I'm meeting up with my boy and the friend of the podcast, and may knock out bets, Andrew, to watch this card at the Meadowlands Sportsbook. Yeah.
Nice.
And so I'm pretty pumped for it. Lags, any thoughts on the card before we jump into it?
Yeah, no, I mean, similar to you, I tried a little bit across last week too. I don't know. I didn't really hate any of my bets last week, to be honest. I mean, there were some spots like here and there, obviously, but obviously Collier being the big one that you touched on. But I mean, this card's not great, I think, from an entertainment perspective. I don't know, maybe like it's like average, I guess, but like from a betting perspective, again, kind of same thing. Maybe average 4 to 5 bets for me.
I hated my Vittori bet last week. That in hindsight, I think about. But anyway, yeah, let's jump into it. So first fight of the night, this is actually my biggest bet on the card. We got Casey O'Neill making her second fight in the UFC, taking on Lara Procopio. And yeah, I bet Procopio very heavy here at minus 110. I also took a stab at her inside the distance plus 600. I don't really love that it seems like everybody in the community seems to be piling in on the Procopio wagon this week. That never seems to bode well. But, the reality of this fight to me is like, I almost bet Shanna Dobson against Casey O'Neill. I actually did make a small wager on fight night because like O'Neill's one of these girls, like she looks on paper, if you don't know what you're looking at, like a good grappler. But she's an Australian grappler, which is, not the end of the world, but not exactly known for the wrestling. She fought in a promotion where her father owned it, Eternal MMA in the Middle East, and basically was kind of running through cans there. Didn't really look to have like the quickest entries. I don't think the best control game, fairly loose on top. And so that was a concern for me going into her debut with Dobson. And even if you were to go back prior to that, she got iced twice in under 90 seconds in her amateur career, which for WMMA is kind of concerning. So yeah, like I guess my view going into that fight was, she's aggressive and I appreciate it, but I don't think she's the best wrestler. Her control is not the best, and she's extraordinarily hittable on the feet. And sure enough, we saw that in that fight. The first time she really went for a takedown, she gave up double unders almost immediately, ended up on her back and getting mounted by Dobson pretty much right away. Now, Shanna Dobson, obviously not very proficient on the mat. Eventually that tide turned, and she ended up putting her down over and over and finishing her. But she comes into this fight 6-0, coming off a finish. And, I think it opened, she was like plus 150 and then got bet down to minus 110. And that's where I grabbed Procopio. But for me, it's like, look, I get Lara's only got 8 fights in the total, but, she beat Mariana Moraes, who, nothing special, but she's a good grappler, certainly a better grappler than anybody O'Neill's faced. She went to absolute war with, Carol Hosa, which, on the one hand, Procopio being a punching bag isn't something I love, but on the other, it showed she can keep a high pace. Hosa's probably got the best pace in WMMA, and she held it the entire way. I think she landed 160 significant strikes in that fight. And then, we saw Molly McCann. And look, Molly McCann's not a great grappler, but, there's certainly worse grapplers than her, and Procopio basically did what she needed to do, attempted 11 takedowns, got her down 7 times, and controlled the whole fight. And so looking at this fight, it's like I aforementioned that, Dobson was able to get double unders really easy with her. And I kind of have the suspicion Procopio is going to be able to do that whenever she wants as well, and probably just put O'Neill on the mat. And unlike every other girl, O'Neill's fought in her career, Procopio actually is a serious grappler. And if she gets flattened out here, she's not going to be able to just kind of roll through position and just sweep her. And then on the feet, like I mentioned, O'Neal, she's aggressive, but she has no defense at all. I think Procopio is the far cleaner striker. I think has more reliable output. I think she hits a bit harder. So I think she's live for a KO. And I think given how sloppy O'Neal's grappling has looked, she's very live for a sub. So plus 600 for the ITD is kind of crazy to me. And yeah, I mean, just in general, I don't think Procopio is a world beater, but I think she's solid everywhere and a plus grappler for sure. Whereas I'm not sure O'Neal is average anywhere aside from, just aggression, which in WMMA goes a long way, but she's facing a girl who's already shown, in the Hossa fight that, physicality and aggression doesn't really bother her. So I think Lara should be about minus 230 this year, like 70% range, maybe even 75 if you want to be generous. I think there's value with the current line, to be honest. So yeah, I'm on her very big. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, I also have 2 units on Lara at minus 122. I think overall here, I think she's the better grappler when this hits the mat. I think, like you said, I think double underhooks are going to be there all day for her. And then if this stays standing, honestly, I don't even give Casey that much of a chance. I know you're giving more of a credit. I don't think it's going to be that close at all on output. I mean, I think she could make it a little bit gritty because she's aggressive, comes forward and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't see this fight being all that close. I think Laura's going to be able to dominate the grappling and probably get herself a finish. I mean, again, Molly's not that great of a grappler, but I would probably, if Molly and O'Neal at evens, I mean, I wouldn't hate a bet at Molly.
I would probably play Molly, to be honest. That's actually a great way to. That's actually a great way to look at.
I'm not trying to play like MMA math. Like our podcast. No, we don't try to play MMA math, but in general, if in that matchup, I don't hate Molly.
Well, I mean, it's just really a case of that. O'Neal has been utterly and completely untested. Shanna Dobson, yeah, she's in the UFC. Yeah, she beat Mariah when she completely gassed out, but. Shanna Dobson, not really a UFC level fighter. She got ragdolled by Sabina Mazo. The fact that O'Neal beat her doesn't really say much. So to me, O'Neal is still a question mark. I think we both like the pace. We all love pace, but she hasn't shown a real technical acumen for any part of the sport to date.
And I love Carol Rosa. She's one of my favorite upcoming women's fighters because of that pace, because of the the aggressive coming forward nature, and the fact that Laura, I had a bet on Carol in that fight. And I want to say it was minus 160, something like that, but. I mean, she made it close. She made it gritty, and that's the thing. We'll touch on the fight later. There's a lot of recency bias. Out grappling Shanna Dobson shouldn't be noteworthy. Everybody does that. To be honest, Dobson has a better takedown defense now than she did before that fight.
I saw that stat. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think Casey's wrestling is all that good, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I mean, yeah, you with me. Obviously, you have a bigger play.
It's really more of a low level MMA. It's girls don't really even have the tools to defend it. It's you don't really even start to see that till high level regionals. And Shanna Dobson has regional level wrestling. But anyway, we spent too much time on this fight. Moving on.
We'll be spending a lot of less time on much further fights. So
probably this one. I'll start with you here, Lags.
Right.
You got Ricky Glenn. I don't know when we started calling him Ricky and not Rick.
So actually, that is this fight. I guess there was an interview with James Lynch.
So he's taking on Joaquim Silva. What do you got?
So to be honest, like we just touched on, I didn't really look into this fight a ton, to be honest, just because both of these guys are coming off of 2+ year long layoffs, and on top of that, Ricky Glenn is coming off of a hip surgery. So again, like that just cause for concern in itself. So I think this is just a stay away fight. It's not really confident. You couldn't be confident either way.
Yeah. I guess I'm in the same boat. It's funny when these lines first came out and I saw Glenn was a dog here, I immediately kind of targeted it. Was like, yeah, I want to play them. But then you kind of go back and like, look, I'm not that I think Glenn is anything special, but I guess a Joaquim Silva anti-truther. I am looking to fade that guy all the time. The guy basically has no skills other than, he's got good BJJ and a lot of power, but he's gassy, low output. He's just not a guy I'm looking basically to ever play. And against a guy like Glenn, who has, decent output and has always been pretty tough and very durable, it seemed like an obvious spot. But then I've also heard about the hip surgery, which was concerning. And then you go back to his last fight with, I think it was Kevin Aguilar, and he just looked so bad and kind of on the other side of the hill there. It's like, I still – yeah.
What's my big takeaway from that fight?
Slow, not super mobile. It's just – maybe the hip surgery makes him a new man again, but it's not something I really want to bank on. I still think if I was making a pick here, it would be Glenn, just because I think I don't want to say Silva's KO or bust, but his style and the fact that I actually looked at this, I don't think he's attempted a single takedown in the UFC. So he's not really, it doesn't really even optimize his chance to win. So he's almost entirely reliant on landing big power shots. So with that in mind, I still think the fight favors Glenn, but it's hard to know where he is in a 2.5-year layoff. I'm not really trying to get behind. So we move on. We got Josh Parisian, another taking on Roque Martinez. It's another ugly one. I don't really have a strong opinion here. I think I think these are maybe the two worst heavyweights in the UFC, to be honest. I don't even like, any of the finish props really associated with it, even with its heavyweight. Actually, one of the plays I've been looking at that I haven't made that I think is interesting or was interesting earlier in the week. Now I'm looking at it's minus 230, but fight goes the distance was interesting. I actually wouldn't even touch the totals in this fight now. Oh no, I'm looking at the
over 1.5.
I
would say the over 1.5 was minus 160.
I thought you were thinking. I was looking at Glenn Silva and I was like, "What the fuck? When did this happen?" But yeah,
the fight goes the distance was plus 230. Yeah.
Yeah, so the fight goes the distance here is plus 125. I actually kind of like that. It's interesting because Parisian I do think has an athleticism and obviously a size edge on Martinez. But, that's not really saying much because Parisian's not much of an athlete. And I actually do think, Martinez's leg kicks and, just his general approach to fights is a little bit more processed than Parisian's. He is very, very busy. I guess the question would be, can Parisian land takedowns? Because if he can probably just ride him out there. But I do sort of think if I was going to take a side, it would be Martinez just because – give me the busy fighter over, the kind of plodding, slow heavyweight reliant on finishes. But in general, I don't expect this fight to finish. I actually think goes the distance at plus money is pretty good here. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of similar thoughts, I guess. I don't know. I was more on the Parisian side here if you were going to take a money line just because of that output. But the issue for me is that Parker Porter fight was just such a bad look of how hittable he was, and just the fact that his cardio went pretty much out the door pretty much after round one. So it's like, again, it's another trash heavyweight fight. Definitely.
Yeah, but Roque's not going to be the guy though that turns up the pace as he gasses out. Though, in fairness, he has a decent pace, but it's mostly a lot of leg kicks.
True. That's kind of why I like the over 1.5 though. I get it, minus 160 is not a bad price for that, and these guys are pretty durable. But just the fact that he just is so hittable, but again. To the other counterpoint there, Roque isn't the guy that pushes the pace, so it's where the rubber meets the road here. But I like the over. Gun to my head. I know we're talking about this fight way too much. Over is the gun to my head bet if I was going to go with this.
Yeah, I actually think the over is a pretty good play, to be honest. I'm probably going to play it, and I'm probably going to play goes the distance. I just think on a side, it's you're just throwing darts with a blindfold on. So anyway, we move up. We got Matt Savelsberger taking on Chaos Williams. Lags, anything here?
So I guess, throwing darts throwing darts blindfolded here again, kind of similarly. I don't know. I don't have a super strong take here. I do like the under. I know FanDuel opened the alternate under at 2.5. I kind of think it's pretty much, but my issue with that is though, I think this fight probably either ends inside round one or it goes the distance. I see a lot of action. I think this could be super busy first. Chaos and Savelsberger are the guys going to push the pace early. So I like the under, but passing, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a strong-ish take here for not having a bet. It's funny because when the line got announced, it was one of the first lines I looked at, and I was like, man, Savelsberger plus 150 against Chaos. I'm probably going to play that. And then I went back and watched it. And it's I actually faded Chaos in his last fight against Pereira, and I played Pereira pretty big, but I don't want to say he blew my socks off. That's not the case. I still have a lot of the same questions that I had going into that fight, but he was more competitive in the stand-up with Pereira than I really expected him to be. I thought Pereira was just going to dust him. And I don't know if that's just because the power threat keeps volume low and allows him to get off on kicks. I think that's part of it. But, that's a concern here because it's the only really strong data point we have from Savelsberger is that fight with Carlton Minus, and his output in that fight was really impressive. If you tell me he comes out here and lands 100 significant strikes against Savelsberger or against Chaos, I'd be on Savelsberger, obviously. But I'm not as sure about that. I'm not super high on Sammy either, just because, again, I think similar to Chaos, he has big grappling deficiencies as well. But Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling Chaos's power is going to probably limit volume here as well. Maybe it doesn't, and if it doesn't, and Sammy can just eat the shots, he's going to cruise. Like I do think his volume upside is significantly higher, but if not, I think it's going to be a close fight. I lean Chaos because I think the low kicks could cause some issues. But yeah, I mean, I guess my strong take is really that I don't know. My strong take is that it's a close fight.
My strong take is I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think Chaos has way more finishing upside, to be honest. So like I think the line's more or less right. If I was going to bet a side, it would be him, just because he seemed durable. He ate Pereira shots with no problem, and I don't think Savelsberger is going to do the stuff that's really caused him issues. But I don't know. At minus 180, I feel like these are two guys who's just like, with Chaos, we have two fights that lasted a total of 2 minutes, and with Savelsberger, we have one fight that lasted 10 seconds. So despite 5 fights between them, there's just not a lot of data here. So it's a pass for me. I lean Chaos, though. Under's fine, I guess, although, again, if it turns out Chaos is limiting volume, then it may just go the distance. So it's not something I really want to get involved with. Moving on, we got Verna Jandiroba taking on Kanato Murata. Yeah, I'm probably going to end up playing Verna here, to be honest. I've gone back and forth on this fight a bit. We've talked about it in the club and sub chat a bit. It's a weird fight because Murata looks like a pretty strong wrestler. And, that's, as someone who's a dog, it's obviously something you want to back. On the other hand, like, the level in grappling that she's jumping here from Randa to Verna is honestly completely insane. You don't, like, Verna would probably be minus 400 against Randa, if we're being honest. Like, if that fight were to be booked tomorrow, that's what probably about what the line would be, and it would probably be about right. Verna is a pretty strong wrestler, probably an underrated wrestler, and an elite submission grappler. And, like, I kind of think with some of the takes I've heard this week, it's like everybody just watched the Dern fight and didn't watch the rest of Verna's career. Like, I keep hearing, Kanako's going to try to take her down. It's like, yeah, I don't think Kanako's going to try to take her down. I think anybody that thinks she's going to try to go to the mat here is kind of crazy. Like, we see this all the time. I think the person that's going to be shooting takedowns here is Verna. If Kanako does take her down, we've seen her putting deep arm bars over and over and over again. I don't think anybody should feel good about her scrambling around on the mat with Verna. And on the other hand, while I get Murata is a decorated wrestler, how often are offensive wrestlers, like strong offensive wrestlers, great defensive grapplers? It's not that often, to be honest. There's some, but it's not that often. And so you're telling me you feel comfortable without any data on Verna or Kanako's defensive grappling that she's going to survive on the mat with Verna? I said it to you before we came on here, Lags, but like I had initially last week or earlier in the week been like, yeah, goes the distance to be good. And then you see how she's reacting to armbar attempts. It's like, armbars are very easy to defend if you know what you're doing. If you're struggling with armbars, I can't imagine your game off your back is much better than that. And so, yeah, I mean, Verna scrambled well with Carla. She held 2.5 minutes on top of Dern with no issues. I think she's pretty clearly the side. I'm going to probably play her. And, yeah, I mean, I think she's going to sub Murata here. I think Verna sub is good. I think Murata is a decent prospect. I don't think this is it, though. Lags, how about you?
This is an interesting matchup, to be honest. And it's not so like I lean the Jandiroba side, but I'm not really too inclined to play her at minus 150. I was talking to you a little bit before this. It's like if this fight isn't playing as much in the grappling realm as I think for Jandiroba, her in the striking realm, again, I don't think minus 150 to take it's not going to be great. But again, you brought that counterpoint that in almost all of her fights outside the Dern fight, she's looking to wrestle and get this fight to the mat, and that's kind of what I see here. I mean, obviously we haven't seen Murata's defensive grappling, but I would assume that it's not anything desirable. And as we see, 13 Jandiroba 16 wins would come by submission. I mean, her 2 losses are obviously, Dern, which was, fuck that fight, beside the point. But Carla Esparza, a solid wrestler. So are we comparing Murata to Esparza? I don't think her grappling is near that level. I mean, again, this is the same thing as we were talking about the O'Neal fight as we are this fight. Out-grappling Randa Marcos isn't that impressive.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good point, too, because it's like, I think Murata's grappling looks good, but the way you're hearing it talked about is as if, she's a wrestler on Carla's level, and I don't really think there's almost any evidence that that's the case.
And even like past that fight, looking at the Ducati fight, it's like that was a close fight where not a ton happened. I think like she just wasn't doing. I mean, it was close because like she wasn't able to consistently get the grappling because her control time isn't very good. I think like, the control in general wasn't good.
Well, right, and that's kind of the other worry, right? It's like, or not worry, I should say, because Verna's the favorite here. But even if Murata does
stop the Verna on the back. Oh,
but even if they keep it standing, it's like I'd expect it to be a pretty low volume affair. Like it's hard for me to see where Murata convincingly wins this fight, to be honest. Anyway, we'll move on. But I think it's an interesting fight. I think you're right about that. Did you make a play here?
I did not. No. And then I would say the last point here is I think Luke mentioned it all as well in the chat. I'll give him a little shine here because he's not in the pod this week. If you're playing Murata this week, you should play her by decision plus 200 because she's not finishing Jandiroba.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, if Dern is able to take this as the mad finisher there.
Yeah, I don't even think positional TK or positional KO is particularly live against Verna. That's a good point.
No.
Moving on, we got Diego Lima taking on. Oh no, never mind.
No, you don't.
We got Nick.
Come on, you skipped the good one.
Nikolai Negumarianu. We're just gonna say Nick or Nikolai against Lex Cameron. What do you got, Lex?
It's another trash fight, to be honest. Again, it's like I think you're making a lot of assumptions. I think you're making a lot of assumptions on the Nick side here. I know a lot of people are on the Nick side of plus 200, but I think again, coming off of a 2+ year long layoff and not looking particularly well against the cans on the regional scene prior to the UFC, and then looking even worse in the Safarov fight. Yeah. Obviously, I know a ton of cage grabs in that fight, but I don't think he looked that great in the regional scene. So it's like I think Cameron's a decent UFC talent, nothing great, nothing special. Like I would lean him like minus 150 here. Like if this was minus 150, I'd probably play Cameron. But like that's about it. That's about the take here I have. I think it's a relatively close-ish fight, but I don't think there's any assumptions to be made on Nick if he hasn't been in the cage the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. I guess I think minus 185 would be my number, and I jump on Cameron. I think the Nick bets I'm seeing this week are kind of nuts, to be honest. Like, I get the idea of fading a fighter who you think is being overvalued by the market. And so I saw a lot of people saying Nick was the side, and like I went back, and obviously there's not a lot to take from the Safarov fight. He just basically gets grapple fucked for 3 rounds. But I was like, okay, maybe there's
hilarious, real quick, hilarious fight.
It is.
Absolutely hilarious.
And like I was thinking maybe there's something in his regional tape that I'm missing that shows there's some promise here, as a young guy. But all he did was crush cans. And I personally, of the tape that was available, nothing in it really blew my hair back. And I mean, look, he's been away for 2 years. I guess, big improvements are possible. I think his improvements would have to be pretty fucking significant to make him a UFC caliber fighter. That's just where I come down on it. And I'm not a big Cammer guy. Look, I bet Ledet against Cammer. But the reality is he beat Ledet in a 15-minute kickboxing match. He beat Fabio Chiran, another ugly fight. Even his fight with William Knight, and now I don't rate William Knight really at all. But, it was a close fight. It's not like he got dumpstered by Knight. And so it's like, I know Cammer's young. He's got 7 fights. It's a big number. I'm not laying minus 250 with it. But Cammer's at least shown the ability to have success against fighters at this level. Like, whatever you think about Justin Ledet, he's a pretty good boxer. He hung around for a bit despite, being a complete basket case. Sorry, Justin, if you're listening. I don't think you are. But, it's just one of those things. It's like, I think we're getting a UFC fighter here who's actually shown – I wouldn't call him an above-average striker, but enough of a striking acumen to hang around for a while against a guy who's shown really no UFC-level skills at all. Look, obviously there could be improvements. I'm kind of hoping the Nick money keeps coming. Like, I would play Cammer pretty happily at minus 185. I think the line now at minus 250 to minus 300 is probably right, though, personally. Moving on, we got Diego Lima taking on Matt Brown. Interesting fight because I kind of thought I would play Lima just because Brown seems shot to an alarming degree lately. If we're just being honest here, he just seems completely done. And, at the same time, Diego Lima, it's funny because I don't think Lima's like a horrible fighter in the sense that he's reasonably technical. He's got good kicks. The kicks against Bilal were impressive. He's obviously improved his takedown defense a bit over the years. The problem is he's not a good athlete. He's not very fast, and he's very fragile. So it's like you can be technically proficient, but if you're not athletic and you're fragile, it's not really a great recipe for fighting up at 170. And then you got Matt Brown, who is also, obviously a legend, but it's going at an alarming rate for him. It's like the end is here. The question is, whether he can pull out one more fight. I hope if he does win this fight, he retires. We'll see. But yeah, I don't have a strong opinion here. I guess my opinion is I think Lima at this point should be able to win this fight, but also Brown is going to force the kind of fight that he can win in, which is basically like a dogfight. And even with Brown's kind of decreased durability, I'm more confident in Brown being able to find a KO shot than I am in Lima being able to find a KO shot. So I'd favor Lima on minutes here just because, Brown has become an exceedingly worse minute winner over the years. And, losing minutes losing minutes to Ben Saunders, that was ugly. He's looked horrible since he came back. He had a brief moment against Miguel Baeza when he clipped him, but he's just looked bad. Yeah. So yeah, I favor Lima in the fight. I think the line's probably right, but I do think, Brown is very live to just take his head off and put it in the third row. Legs, how about you?
I think that's very live too, and that's the thing too that's tough with this fight. On the last fight with Condit and Brown, I bet the under 2.5 there at a big plus number. And we're here again, Lima Brown, the under 2.5 is a nice big plus number. But it's like you said, Lima's not athletic. He's not going to if Brown isn't pushing that type of dog fight, then I don't know. I'm not feeling great about this under. But again, it's two fragile guys. They're probably just going to go to war. So it's
yeah,
I don't know. It's really tough. It's a tough fight.
I looked at the under. It's just like one of those things where it's like, Narco Cop just mentioned it in the chat. Lima's not high volume. That's kind of right. If he was, I would be more confident in it. But I could easily just seeing it Brown pushing forward and then Lima trying to clinch with him to hang on for dear life. And Brown, I want to bet Brown. Or I would wanted to bet Brown going into tape. But right. He's like I said, he's done. He's completely done. If he just keels over from a jab, would anybody be shocked? I wouldn't. Yeah, so it's another shit show. I hope Matt Brown wins because it would be cool to see him, kind of go out on top if this is the end. But yeah, moving on, we got to Turman Bruno Silva. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, so I actually made a big bet, not a big bet. I made a 1.5 unit bet on Turman here, plus 126 earlier. Yeah, this is really kind of a shit show, to be honest, once you get into the Bruno Silva tape. The guy's slow, plodding, doesn't really have any cardio. He's relying on the power. He's been, I think it's off a 2-year-long layoff now, I believe.
Yeah.
Coming off a steroid suspension.
2 year, yeah.
I think Turman should pretty much handle him in the grappling, which obviously he's going to look to grapple here. I'm not going to look to stand with Silva. That's pretty much it. I think Turman should be able to grapple him fairly easily.
Yeah, I'm also on Turman, and I'm on him pretty big. I don't at plus 125. I don't really understand the line. I frankly don't really understand what the UFC saw. Maybe Sean Shelby just one night was looking through Tapology pages and saw a bunch of knockouts. I don't. Which again, I'm not trying to say Bruno Silva can't knock out Wellington Turman. Turman obviously got KO'd in his last fight. It could obviously happen again. But watching Silva, he's tragically low volume. He's a terrible grappler. He's very hittable. He does that whole shell up thing instead of, try to look to, deflect and return. He's gassy and he's coming off a steroid suspension. And so it's I have issues with some of Turman's game. Obviously, most of us on the podcast played Sanchez before his last fight. But also, Sanchez is kind of the antithesis to Turman's game. Turman wants to clinch you up and take you down. You could tell pretty much 30 seconds in when he tried to clinch up Sanchez, it wasn't going to happen. And at that point, he's in a technical boxing match with just a much better boxer. Here, it's Silva hits hard, but I actually kind of think Turman's the better striker, to be completely honest, if it did come to that. Like I said, he tends to shell up, and Turman will throw. And it's not I know Sanchez knocked him out but he threw 3 straight overhands that landed on the chin before he went out. It's not like he's getting, hit and covering up. He's not going out soft. And then you touch on it with the grappling. Silva's shown really no grappling acumen at all. He goes down easily. He gives up his back easily. And Turman is very, very reliable to push a pace. Silva, I honestly think, maybe he hits harder, but he's really more like a Walmart Marcus Perez who Turman dealt with fairly easily. I
think what's an interesting point too. I think when you brought the interest, like Andrew's a lot more mobile on the feet with his footwork. Silva's slow and plodding. He's just going to come forward, and then eventually maybe just blitz and just try to hit you with an overhand. That struggled with the footwork. Go ahead.
Even the Shlemenko fight, which is basically his signature win, he was getting his ass handed to him for 3 minutes, and then he caught him with a knee. Like, obviously, he could meme him with that. The way last week went, I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. But I'm just I'm pretty confident that Turman is going to go and push a pace, put him on the fence, take him down, and pretty much do whatever he wants there. Whether he subs him or not, I don't know. I hate that he doesn't put a body triangle in just because you saw Carl Roberson reverse position from the back a few times. That always is concerning. But I just don't think
Carl is a better grappler, I think, than Silva.
I agree.
Obviously, yeah.
But I'm just saying, even if that happens,
yeah.
I'm not even really concerned about Turman being held down. I'm trying to be conservative about it, but I don't see how Turman's under 60% to win here, minus 150.
And that's why I think, and that's why I'm not going to get cute with the inside the distance. I think he could sub him. Obviously we talked about the grappling deficiencies for Silva, but I think it's a lay and pray could definitely be in play here.
Yeah, agreed. We move on. We got Juicy J coming back off knocking out Nate Landwehr, taking on Sungwoo Choi, who cashed a bet at plus 200 for the podcast against Yusuf Zalal in his last fight. Look, I like Choi. I was pumped to hit that against Zalal. I like Arosa too. Arosa is one of the more fun fighters in the UFC. The guy just
cashed that underdog against Sean Woodson.
Yeah. But this is a weird fight. Honestly, I think it's a very, very odd. It's an odd fight because Arosa is going to push a pace. He might even be the cleaner boxer, to be honest. The problem is Arosa, and we'll get to this in the next fight too, fights with his hands down, and he is so easy to counter. And all Choi wants to do is basically sit back and counter with him. And those shots are going to be there this fight. I honestly think that that's the case. The shots to take Arosa's head off will be there. Now, whether he does it or not, I don't really know. I guess my concern is Arosa is way more experienced, and if we're being honest, has been fighting, I shouldn't say a higher level of competition because Choi fought Evlov and Tucker in his first 2 fights, but he's been succeeding against a much higher level of competition than what Choi has here. So it's I think the chances for Choi to put him out are going to be there in this fight. But also, Choi got subbed by Tucker and does have tendency to give his back up. And Arosa is also just the kind of guy who's going to go in there, get in your face, and cause chaos. My suspicion is Choi will probably be fine with that, but he might not be. You really don't know. You can see Woodson was starting to break under the kind of pressure Arosa brought to him. And plus, Arosa's a black belt, and he's going to try to take him down. My lean's Choi. I kind of think, if you're going to play it, the under is the way to go here. I think the under 2.5 is currently sitting at about plus 120. Doesn't go to a decision, is about plus 100. I think it's interesting because I don't really think if Choi is getting off, Rosa is not very likely to make the final bell anyway. What do you think, Legs?
Yep. Words right out of my mouth. 1 unit, under 2.5, plus 135.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty much. I think GCJ is pretty much not going to fuck off here. That's essentially his game plan. We saw that in the woods. I put that in my prop article this week. His tendency, his style is just that forward pressure, output, pace. And Choi, like you said, Choi's just going to be sitting there for the heavy counters, ready to counter him in the pocket. Arosa could use his grappling upside here and potentially take it to the mat as well, like you touched on with the Gavin Tucker fight. So the under 2.5, I think it checks a lot of boxes here. So I think even at plus 110, I don't hate it.
Early round Choi props aren't bad either. I'm looking now, and it looks like Choi round 1 plus 500, which is pretty interesting. Choi TKO round 1 plus 700, or you just play the round 1, round 2. I do sort of think if Arosa can't get him down, it's going to be only a matter of time, really, till Choi puts him out. So, we'll see.
Yeah, don't hate it.
moving on, we got I guess these two or three fights, Turban Silva, Joya Rosa, Vera Grant, could be kind of termed the the fight of the night bracket for the card. But yeah, Marlon Vera, Davey Grant. You got anything here, Lex?
Yeah, and as you bring it up, the fight of the night bracket. I have bets on all three of those fights. So fight number 2, Cheeto Vera, Davey Grant 2. 1 unit Davey Grant plus 220, and a half unit Davey Grant by decision plus 380. I know this fight's been 5 years since the first fight, but I really do think that the grappling and striking advantages for Davey are still there outside of just the slight cracking durability that we've seen, obviously, in his last 2 fights where he's been dropped. But again, it's like Cheeto doesn't fucking push the pace. I wrote that again in my prep. He doesn't fucking want to fight, really. Any guy that pushes any kind of pace is bringing that fight to him, that kind of dog fight that Davey Grant.
I was going to say, I would say Cheeto pushes a pace as long as he's the one going forward.
Right. If he's not pushing the pace, that guy is pushing that dogfight out of him, he's not going to, want to return fire there unless he's able to take over, which we've seen in this huge finish streak. Again, we've touched on before for the O'Malley breakdown. None of those opponents were really all that of that great caliber, to be honest with you. So I think this is a pretty close fight. Obviously, I think the only finishing upside would probably be a Cheeto knockout or a Cheeto club and sub type finish. But yeah, if this goes to decision.
Lags is frozen. All right, I will take it away from there. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think the narrative around, Grant's durability is a bit of a straw man argument, if I'm being completely honest. And by that, I mean, yeah, look, I know he got dropped in his last 2 fights, but first of all, he bounced back pretty much right away. But actually, if you look at how he got dropped, when Grant goes forward, he comes up there with his chin in the air at all times, pretty much. He tends to wing hooks, and so he's there to be hurt and countered by heavy, sharp counter strikers. Grant caught him on a counter shot. So did Martin Day. Cheeto Vera is not a counter striker. One thing you'll see if you're looking at Vera's tape, and Lags was touching on it a bit, when you go forward on Vera, he doesn't really have any kind of thing to fall back on other than leg kicks. Someone should scream cap this and make a meme of it. But he has really nothing to fall back on other than leg kicks. When you go to the head when he's backing up, he tends to just shell up. And, Grant basically is pretty reliable to, on the feet anyway, go forward and keep a heavy pace. And so, I don't know. I've seen takes that, at some point there's going to be a shift in the fight and Vera is going to start pushing forward. And, my question is why? It's not like, you look at the guys Vera's really done that to. They've either been, meme moments or guys have slowed down, but Grant doesn't really have bad cardio. I don't really see any reason he would back up. And unlike Vera, who doesn't really have the threat of serious wrestling in his back pocket if he gets pressured, Grant does. I mean, we've seen this fight once, and I know it was a few years ago, and Grant beat the fucking brakes off him. And again, I know it was a few years ago, and I keep hearing Cheeto got better. But what did he get better at? Can someone tell me? I want to know, because you look at maybe he's better at finishing people now. That may be the case.
To be honest, that the one thing I was going to point up, I would say maybe he's more explosive nowadays. But I mean, that could be just with experience in general.
But nothing in his process has gotten better. I mean, look at the run that he's been on. Even this whole run, who's the best fighter he's been? I mean, obviously O'Malley is the best fighter he's beaten on it.
Right.
But I mean, O'Malley and got hurt. You look at the rest of the run. I mean, Andre Ewell was punching his fucking face off for the first round of that fight and then gassed out. Guido Canetti hurt him badly, finished him. Nolan Hernandez won the first round of that fight. Nolan Hernandez is not in the UFC anymore, took him down and controlled him. Frankie Saenz, basically a corpse. Luigi Burin won the first round of that fight. I get he's finding finishes late in the fight, but that doesn't mean that, he gets better as the fight goes on. It's like the old baseball fallacy. It's people are clutch hitters. They get better in big spots. No, they just don't get worse in big spots. I don't really see anywhere that, anything that would imply that Grant's going to slow down tangibly here. Not to say Vera, maybe he could force a war, but Vera's not a great grappler. Yeah, he's got some slick submissions off his back, but I honestly think if Grant wants to put him down and hold him there, he probably can. That's probably the path of least resistance for him here. All of this is to say Grant is old. Cheeto is a lot younger. But I don't know, man. I think it's a close to evens fight, slightly in Cheeto maybe. I I just don't really buy any of the arguments around Cheeto, like durability, anything. I think Grant's the more skilled fighter and can do more things. He's just 35, and we've seen him hurt a bit more lately. But yeah, so I'm on Grant here, plus 220 as well. We move on. I will stick with you here, Lags. We got the boa constrictor taking on the polar bear.
Yep, and speaking with getting hurt a lot lately. Poor man Alexei Oleinik is probably getting hurt again, I think, in this fight. But yeah, similar like you touched on. This is the battle of the predator nicknames. We got the boa constrictor versus the polar bear. And that's the story of Oleinik's career. Really. 59 of his 75 fights have gone under 1.5 rounds. 10 of his 14 UFC fights have gone under 1.5 rounds. The guy has a round and a half of cardio nowadays, and if he doesn't get you to the mat and sub you and find him the Ezekiel choke, he's probably getting knocked out in the process. And I don't know. I mean, I get it with Spivak. He's not as big of a hitter as Daukaus, because I was pretty heavy on Daukaus under 1.5 at the same line. But my thing is, like, I think it's more on the Oleinik side here. It's like durability is really going down a cliff, and like it's either he gets you down, is able to find that sub, or he is. I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. Like I saw some people saying maybe Spivak's able to have some solid top control, whatnot. Well, either A, he's probably able to pound him out from top control, or B, Oleinik's crafty enough to maybe find that Ezekiel from the bottom. So I think under 1.5 and minus 145. It's not a huge play like it was in the Daukaus fight, but I think one unit, I like it.
Yeah, I've been trying to talk myself into playing Spivak. I'm a little scared of the number here, to be honest. Minus 230.
We were talking about it with Daukaus. I was about to play Daukaus minus 175, and it was the same thing. We just never saw the grappling holes.
I trust Spivak's grappling a bit more than I trust Daukaus's, though. Okay. Although, with that said,
sorry, I guess for me, real quick, I favor the finishing ability of Daukaus more than Spivak. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fair. If you removed, the Tybura fight is really what kind of sticks in my craw, him getting held down for 3 rounds in that fight. If you removed that from the sample, I'd be all over Spivak at the current number. But he did get held down there. But then again, it's like Oleinik, he doesn't have the kind of physicality and strength, I don't think, at this point in his career that Marcin Tybura does. No. And so it's like, I don't know. I do think he might be able to get on top of Spivak early, but I also kind of think if you watch Oleinik on top, he's not it's not like Demi and Maya on there. He's not someone who's just going to slice through your guard. He's looking to do weird shit. Derek Lewis, I will never fucking forgive him for trying to submit Derek Lewis with a fucking scarf hold for 2 minutes. Just fucking mount the guy. What are you doing?
Honestly, it was really depressing watching.
It was really,
because that's the thing. That's another one of these fights where it's like you have the plus 210 dog, and he's this close to winning. He loses, and then you get shit for it. And it's like, dude, he was this close to finishing it. What the fuck are you watching, man?
And I kind of feel like I do sort of think he's going to get Spivak down early. I also am pretty confident that Spivak can defend himself on the mat, though. And so it's one of those things. Do I think Oleinik can win a decision? Not really, because I think once he starts to slow down, the takedowns will stop coming, and he's going to get killed. But yeah, there's enough concerns there. I don't think the under's bad. Like I said, I'm debating Spivak. I think he's clearly the more skilled fighter at this point. It's not really a debate, but yeah, the Tybura fight's enough for me to not bet it. But I do think Spivak's the side. If you put a gun to my head, I would definitely be taking Spivak here. Yeah, I just think Oleinik's old, and I think he pretty much needs a sub in the first 3 minutes. Otherwise, the wheels are probably going to come off, and he's probably going to get finished.
I was actually just looking that's what I was looking real quick to see if there's a little bit of extra round props, like the fight doesn't start round 3 because maybe. But that actually got steamed. People were actually wise to that. It
doesn't start round 3.
Or sorry, my bad. Doesn't make it full fight won't start round 3.
What's the number on it?
It opened to minus 210, got steamed to minus 280.
Yeah, that's about right. If it starts round 3, this is going to be a fucking ugly fight. I can tell you that. This is going to be unwatchable. I don't understand why this is the co-main. Again, it's just very
I think the Cheeto fight could have been co-main. The Rosa Choi could have been co-main.
Well, yeah, I agree. There's a lot.
You probably could even make a decent. I don't know if you can make a decent case for Lima Brown over Oleinik Spivak on.
If you were going to get an emotional Brown send-off where he takes the gloves off and hangs it up, you can make a case for it. And then
you got no fans.
A couple extra bucks under the table to get knocked out again. But we move on. We got a fun main event. This is definitely the rare time in the last few months that we get the main event is the best fight on paper on the card, I think. We got Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, looking to bounce back from his loss to Brian Ortega, taking on Dan Ige. And I have no bet here. I'm thinking about playing Ige. I guess my view is, and the reason I haven't bet it, like I shouldn't say I don't rate Zombie. Like he's obviously good at what he does. You know, he's very dangerous in brawls. He hits very hard for the division. His output's not bad, and obviously he's a very good submission grappler. The problem is he doesn't wrestle very much. You know, he's not the best wrestler when he does wrestle. And I kind of think if you don't give him a brawl, he doesn't really have much to offer. Like I don't really think what Ortega did to him was like. I don't want to say it wasn't impressive. Like, yes, it was impressive to see Ortega fight to a game plan, but basically he just kind of hung on the outside and didn't engage him in just big pocket swinging matches. And we kind of saw what's been true for the majority of Zombie's career, that if you don't give him a swinging match, he's kind of easy to pick apart. I think Ige has the tools to do that here, but also I think, yeah, like we talked about.
I don't know.
Like, if Ige was like a clever striker who I could trust to like, use leg kicks, look to get in and out with a jab, or use feints to draw shots out, I'd be all over him here because I do think, when you look at them on paper, Ige's younger, he's faster, he hits harder, he seems more durable at this point in their careers. He's got great gas. On paper, he checks all the boxes, and I do think he should be able to take care of business. My big concern with Ige is he seems very willing to bite the mouthpiece and get into brawls. And that's pretty much just deciding you want to go right into Zombie's world and play that game. And that game's the kind of game where anyone could die at any time. I still kind of favor Ige at this point in there. Like he took shots from Barboza and Cater and kept coming, no problem. And so my lean, even in a brawl, is that he should still be the guy with more tools to fall back on. But I don't know. I don't really want to have money on a guy that's going to, fight Zombie in that kind of fight. But even so, I'm kind of watching the line. If Ige moves back to like dog money, I'm going to probably play him just because I think he should probably be 55 to 60%. I'd say the confidence interval there is like fairly low just because in a brawl you kind of do throw everything out the window. But I just, at this point in his career and at this point in Zombie's career, I don't even take that much away from Zombie for losing the Ortega fight or the Rodriguez fight. It's just kind of the fighter he is. If you do that shit to him forever, he'll lose. But they're on different trajectories. And I think Ige has, as Z would say, hardware for days. Like, he can take shots and he can give them. Whereas, Zombie can give him, but you're seeing the durability start to crack a bit. I just think Ige is a little bit more reliable in everything. What do you think?
Yeah, one would say Ige is a good soldier. Yeah, real quick though. So I mean, I do like the fight doesn't go the distance here. I haven't made a bet on it yet, but my issue with that though is just like Ige seems super fucking durable. But again, it's a weird fight because like you would think at minus 110, okay, you got the guy with the cardio edge, durability edge, power edge. Output edge. Power's probably close. Maybe Zombie hits a little harder. I know you said Ige hits harder.
So.
I think it's close. I'll give Zombie the benefit of the doubt there. I think that's close. And then, so like, where's Zombie checking the boxes here? I mean, if he's grappling heavy, but I don't think he's not looking to grapple heavy here. So it's like, it seems like it should be a good bet. But again, Ige fights in the style that I think is going to give Zombie the perfect style. And that's why I do like the fight doesn't go the distance. But the issue with that, again, Ige is durable. Zombie, we've seen the durability cracking. But yeah. No bet for me. Lean Ige, lean the under, but
I'm probably gonna bet Ige, to be honest. Like you just said, especially like when you lay it out like that, it's just really like unless I just don't trust my read at all, and I do trust my read, it's hard to not cap Ige at like 55 to 60%. Like look, I think the opportunities for Zombie to take his head off are going to be there, but on a minute-to-minute and second-to-second basis, I just trust Ige to kind of be doing more, and to just be the better athlete at this point in their careers. So,
fair. Yeah.
But yeah, guys, that's what we got for tonight. Next week, well, do we have one next week? Yeah, we do. We have Volkov gone next week. Actually,
which is actually pretty interesting because we're seeing Volkov get up to plus 140 now.
Yeah. He's there on Bet Online, and they got plus 135 dimes, plus 130 Bet 365. Yeah, there's some interesting fights. It's not the best card ever, to be honest. Obviously,
especially because we actually just got two. Yeah, true. But we actually just got two fights switched up. Obviously, now that we have OSP and Bozer, and we have Amiv's off. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but I don't know. We'll be here next week. It'll be fun. I'm sure we'll have a lot of bets going out there for that fight. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out. As always, please, again, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We'd really like to get to 500 by the Connor card. We're at 478. 22 of you, please do it. But yeah, guys, we appreciate you coming out here tonight. Weird night. We should have the whole crew back in tow next week. As usual, you got me, John Stargarian, on Twitter at MMA Fox, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. Try to enjoy the card this week. Lags, before we go, anything on PFL?
Nothing too strong, to be honest with you.
Okay, cool. All right.
You got anything?
I have a few things. I have a couple units on Kunchenko at minus 150, and I have a couple units on ACJ at about minus 230 here. I also don't think, well, before he missed weight, I would have said a small stab of Cooper might be warranted. And yeah, so that's what we got tonight. But thanks for coming out, boys. See you next week. Bye.